Hello everyone, welcome back to the Movie Reviewers 100. My name is Scott, also known as Cineram. I do the Thursday videos here, and luckily for me, this is Tony Scott Tribute Week. My compatriots on this channel have left it to me to review the very best movie Tony Scott has made, True Romance, which of course is from the Quentin Tarantino script. Now, of course, most of you, I'm sure, are very familiar with Tarantino, Pulp Fiction, Kill Bill, Inglourious Basterds, etc. His first film was Reservoir Dogs. Before that movie was actually made, he had written at least 3 scripts that hadn't been produced at that point. One was From Dusk Till Dawn that went on to be done by Robert Rodriguez, Natural Born Killers, which Oliver Stone directed and, of course, heavily rewrote, and this one, which was directed by Tony Scott. And it was sort of a situation where in 1992, Reservoir Dogs was first seen at the Sundance Film Festival, and as soon as people saw it, everyone went, "Whoa, Quentin Tarantino, oh my goodness, who knows who this guy is? He's great, find everything that he's done so far, and let's get it in production." So that's why we had, some of those movies come out before Pulp Fiction, which was his second film. Now, a friend of mine and I were talking about True Romance and Tony Scott in general the day actually that it was announced that he passed away, and we were talking about how unfortunate it was that he, in his later, in the latter part of his career, in the past few years, he wasn't getting the really good scripts like he used to. He's been seen as, I think, someone who can be relied upon to deliver a good exploitation film, good solid thriller without a lot of weight to it or a lot of heavy meaning or prestige to it, and in the 90s he really had a streak of good luck as far as the projects that he did. In 1991, one of my favorite movies by him was The Last Boy Scout, and that was from a script by Shane Black, who also wrote Lethal Weapon and The Long Kiss Goodnight, and wrote and directed a film called Kiss Kiss Bang Bang with Robert Downey Jr. And then he went on to do this Quentin Tarantino script, True Romance, and then brought, of course, Quentin Tarantino in to do rewrites on Crimson Tide, which I think one of the other guys reviewed already. But True Romance is, of course, True Romance is not necessarily, although I think it's his best film, largely because of the script and because of the cast. There's some really great people in there. Val Kilmer played Iceman in Top Gun. He plays Elvis Presley, basically. He's never referred to as Elvis Presley. The credits don't list him as Elvis Presley, but clearly he's playing that character. He's really a lot of fun in that. And this movie also probably has my favorite performance by the late Dennis Hopper. I've seen him in a bunch of stuff, but I really like him a lot in the movie. I don't know, well, whether or not it's his best performance, it's certainly my favorite performance in this movie. He is one of the most real guys. A lot of these guys are big over-the-top cartoons. You've got Brad Pitt as the stoner, you've got Christopher Walken playing the gangster, you've got Gary Oldman. Oh my goodness, Lord, Gary Oldman is so insane in this movie. He spoke like this first line. He's only in 2 scenes of the movie. He spoke his first line, and I immediately started laughing. I was just like, oh my goodness, he's going to be doing this throughout the whole thing. That's hilarious. That's really great. But Dennis Hopper plays the main character's Clarence's father, and he's actually a pretty, pretty normal person compared to most of the other people in the cast. I really like him a lot in the movie. Of course, Christian Slater as Clarence, and Patricia Arquette plays Alabama, the girl that he meets and then marries. And then finds out, of course, that she was a prostitute working for Gary Oldman, and so he decides to rid both of them of Gary Oldman's character. So he goes and pays him a visit, but instead of giving him money, he ends up killing him and taking a big suitcase, which he thinks is full of his lady's clothes and personal effects, but it's actually full of cocaine. So as they drive to Los Angeles to visit an old friend of his, played by Michael Rappaport, they concoct an idea. Hey, look, what we need to do is we need to sell all this stuff to a high roller, get a bunch of money, and then just leave the country, because we don't want anyone after us. Of course, the Christopher Walken character finds out about what happened and pays Dennis Hopper a little visit. That's a very famous scene with the two of them kind of taunting each other. And then he sends James Gandolfini and some of the other gangsters to LA to find Clarence, to find Alabama, and get their drugs back. At which point, all 3 groups of people, including the people who Clarence is trying to sell to, a movie producer played by Saul Rubinek, they all sort of converge in a big climax, kind of like Reservoir Dogs, and everyone is standing around in a room pointing guns at each other and threatening each other. Saul Rubinek, by the way, is playing a character that seems to be very much inspired by Joel Silver. He's made up, and his hair, his facial hair, his clothes makes him look a lot like Joel Silver, who is the producer of course, Lethal Weapon, and a lot of other really noteworthy action pictures like The Matrix and its sequels. Real sort of larger-than-life guy, very, very boisterous, and you know, someone who maybe a lot of people in the industry maybe don't like as much because he doesn't, you know, he really sort of takes center stage a lot. Anyway, I'm getting off track, but Saul Rubinek basically is playing Joel Silver in the movie. So yeah, although I really love this movie a lot, and consider it Tony Scott's best movie, I wouldn't consider it the definitive Tony Scott movie. For me, the definitive Tony Scott movie is The Last Boy Scout. And that's because True Romance, the core of the movie is centered around this very sweet love story between the two of them. You know, they meet for the first time, they fall for each other within, you know, the span of a day and get married, you know, on the quick. And then they have this adventure together. And Last Boy Scout is not like that. Last Boy Scout's a down and dirty picture, and there's plenty of down and dirty scenes in True Romance. That's sort of like the definitive Tony Scott scenario for me. Tony Scott, before he sort of changed his visual style up last decade with Man on Fire and Domino and Deja Vu and films like that, he favored a certain type of visual style that was sort of hazy and mysterious. He would use long lenses, which is basically a telephoto lens. Rather than planting the camera in front of an actor, he would put it all the way on the other side of the room and just use the telephoto lens to shoot a close-up of him, which compresses the image and makes the background all sort of blurry and abstract. He would also use really dramatic colored lighting, and he would use what they call diffusion smoke on the set, which creates this kind of like a very light fog, a haze. And so the light basically, it's like he's lighting the air. The air around the actors would be lit in a certain way, not just the backgrounds in their faces, but the air as well. And that's, you know, whenever you, after seeing The Last Boy Scout, I saw the first trailer for True Romance, and I thought, you know what, if no one told me this movie was directed by Tony Scott, I would know it immediately just because it looks so much like The Last Boy Scout. Yeah, The Last Boy Scout isn't sweet, okay, it's really sort of hard-bitten, and there's a lot of big criminal elements in there, and, you know, the main character is sort of a scuzzy alcoholic PI played by Bruce Willis, and, you know, even after he saves the life of the really important guy at the end, he punches him out anyway just because he doesn't like him, you know. A really a fun movie, and kind of nasty and hard-bitten. And there's elements of that in True Romance involving some of the characters, especially, you know, Gary Oldman's character. But I wouldn't, Last Boy Scout for me is the definitive Tony Scott movie. You know, some people wrote about how Ridley Scott, Tony's brother, got Oscar nominations and a lot of respect, and they're like, gee, it's too bad Tony didn't get that as well while he was still alive. I'm like, Tony didn't want that, okay? Tony Scott is a badass, or excuse me, was a badass, okay? He didn't want awards. If he wanted awards, he would have made the kinds of movies that people give awards to. He liked movies about good guys and bad guys. He liked conflict. He liked scum, slime, crime, and grime, you know, and bad people, and tough guys, and guns, and girls, and just, you know, loud music and everything like that. And he had a couple respectable movies. Crimson Tide and Spy Game, I think, are some of the more respectable movies that he made. And they're good movies. But to me, he really seems more home with the down and dirty, gritty stuff. Domino is kind of like that. I was really excited to see Domino because it seemed more like that kind of, you know, it's all scuzzy bounty hunters played by Mickey Rourke and what have you, you know, and mobsters, gangsters. That really seemed like more his element. And I was really disappointed in that movie. I thought it was pretty bad, actually, and ugly, too. Just an ugly-looking movie. In his later movies, he tended to use a lot of, you know, bleed the color out of the image, you know. They would look really kind of sickly yellow and green, and he used lots of zooming in and out, and just like it would, you know, a lot of post-production effects that really made the film busy but really didn't add anything to it. I prefer his 90s style, and especially the three films I mentioned. True Romance, Last Boy Scout, and Crimson Tide, I think, are three that he did right in a row that are just exemplary films of his. I'm a big fan of Deja Vu as well, but for me, the best of Tony Scott came from that period, especially True Romance, which is, you know, a fantastic movie. So, anyway, thanks very much for watching. If you haven't checked out the other guys' videos on Tony Scott, we've got another kind of badass director coming next week, which should be like tomorrow. That'll be the theme of our new week. Another real sort of down and dirty kind of director. Real sort of how do I describe it? You know, guy who's fond of, I don't know, fists, hard-boiled stuff. I don't know. But we'll leave the other guys to talk about his films later on. But if you haven't seen the other videos on Tony Scott, please do check them out. Thanks very much for watching. Maybe this ran too long. I don't know. I'm about to find out. But take it easy.